Kyle Busch might be headed to Richard Childress Racing in 2023, and North Wilkesboro is officially back and will host the 2023 NASCAR All-Star Race. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsport stories to discuss here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. The first paint scheme we're going to go ahead and take a look at is Ty Gibbs' 2022 McDonald's scheme they're going to be seeing this weekend at Kansas. This one's very similar to the 45 car that Kurt Busch ran. The only difference is the 23 car. I like it a lot, though. It looks really solid, and I'm looking forward to seeing it on the racetrack this weekend at Kansas. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Sam Mayer's 2022 Hux Accelerate scheme they're going to be seeing this weekend at Kansas. Pretty cool. They're basically combining both the sponsors he's had. He's had Hux on the car in the past. He's had Accelerate on the car for a majority of the year. Overall, I think the paint scheme looks good, and I'm excited to see on the racetrack this weekend at Kansas. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ty Dillon's 2022 Sunseeker Resort scheme that I believe we're going to be seeing this weekend at Kansas. Pretty cool to see that Ty Dillon has a new sponsor. Not the biggest fan of the paint scheme, but it's great to see that he has a new sponsor for this weekend. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Bubba Wallace's 2022 Root Insurance Patriotic scheme they're going to be seeing this weekend at Kansas in remembrance of 9/11. Really good looking paint scheme, in my opinion. I love the red, white, and blue on it. I think it looks absolutely magnificent, and I'm really excited to see on the racetrack this weekend at Kansas. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Harrison Burton's 2022 Master Force Menard scheme they're going to see this weekend at Kansas. Honestly, it's okay. Nothing special, but I do like some things about it, but I'm not a big fan of others. Hope this car will have a good run this weekend, though. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jack Wood's 2022 7-win scheme they're going to be seeing this weekend at Kansas. I think the scheme looks really good in my opinion. Of course, it'll be for later today in the Campbell Truck Series race with the red, white. I think it looks really good. I'm excited to see on the racetrack this weekend at Kansas. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Derek Griffith's 2022 Spot-On scheme they're going to see this weekend at Kansas. Pretty cool to see that Derek Griffith has a new sponsor, and awesome to see he's getting some more starts with Sam Hunt Racing. Hopefully have a good run in this car. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is BJ McLeod's 2022 Circle B Diecast Patriotic scheme they're going to be seeing this weekend at Kansas. This paint seems alright in my opinion. The only thing I'm not a big fan of is the number. I don't like the golden number that they have there. I don't think it matches up perfectly with everything else. But I think other than that, it's a pretty decent looking paint scheme. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Derek Krause's 2022 Kafka Granite scheme they're going to be seeing in today's race at Kansas. Pretty solid looking paint scheme in my opinion. Hopefully Derek Krause will have a good run in this car later this evening, and hopefully have a good run in the truck. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is AJ Allmendinger's 2022 Annie's Frozen Custard scheme they're going to be seeing later this year at Texas Motor Speedway, which will be the opening race for the Xfinity Series playoffs. Pretty cool looking paint scheme in my opinion. I think it looks retro, looks classy, looks awesome, and I'm looking forward to seeing on the racetrack later this year at Texas. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ben Rowe's 2022 Kubota scheme they're going to be seeing this weekend at Kansas. Pretty excited to see that Ben Rose has a new sponsor for this weekend. I think it's really exciting for sure. And hopefully Ben Rose will have a really strong run in this truck this weekend at Kansas. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Kansas purse money for this weekend. So, Bob Poggers every single week, usually on every Wednesday, he releases a purse money they're going to be seeing for every single race. And so for the Cup Series, it's going to be $8,338,881. For the Xfinity Series, it's $1,661,536. And finally, the Truck Series will be $648,530. It's a little more higher than normal because I think with the playoffs basically going on for all the series, respectfully except the Xfinity Series, that's one of the reasons why I do believe that the purses are a little bit higher. But that is going to be the purse money for this weekend at Kansas. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Raymond Brothers Racing. As Raymond Brothers Racing has made some updates to their entries for this weekend. So Mason Maggio is going to be actually, instead of, I believe, driving a 43 car, he'll be driving the 33 truck tomorrow night. And then Armani Williams, who was not originally on the entry list, will be driving the 43 truck. It's cool to see both drivers are continuing to get entries. Of course, Mason Maggio was supposed to race, but he was in the 43 truck. But I think this is a really cool change for the Raymond Brothers Racing organization. It's something that probably needed to happen for the organization overall, in my opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jagger Jones. As Jagger Jones is going to be heading to Indy Lights in 2023, and he'll be driving for Cape Motorsports. Jagger Jones, who also used to compete in what it used to be called the ARCA East and the ARCA West Series, or the K&N West Series, and won races over there. He has been doing a lot of stuff in the Indy world and will be jumping up to Indy Lights. He has done really, really good in the Indy 2000 and big series down there, and I think he will be doing really good in Indy Lights next year. I expect some great things from Jagger Jones, and I think he will absolutely be a championship contender next year in Indy Lights. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Louis Foster. As Louis Foster is officially headed to Indy Lights in 2023, and he will drive for Andretti Autosport. Louis Foster has been competing in Indy Pro 2000 as well, and has been doing a really good job there. He's absolutely a championship contender, and I expect that Louis Foster is only going to improve, and I think he will be a championship contender with Andretti Autosport in 2023. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Brad Smith. As Brad Smith is officially returning to ARCA full-time in 2023. Brad Smith has been racing ARCA for many, many years. I'm not sure if he's won ARCA race or not. If he has, you should let me know in the comments. But I think it's really cool that Brad Smith is getting an opportunity to continue racing in ARCA. He's been a lifelong veteran with the ARCA series. He hasn't really raced an Xfinity or Cup ever before, but it's amazing to see that he has such loyalty to ARCA, and it's really exciting that he's returning next year. I would love for Brad Smith maybe somehow get a win on a super speedway. I think that'd be magnificent and cool, but it's exciting to see that Brad Smith is returning to ARCA in 2023. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Connor Mosack. As Connor Mosack is going to drive the 32 for Brett Holmes Racing next week at Bristol Motor Speedway for the Truck Series when they kick off the round of 8. Really great to see that Connor Mosack's getting another opportunity. I think Connor raced a couple weekends ago for trucks, if I'm not mistaken. So it's exciting to see that he's getting another opportunity to drive in the Truck Series, because it's really cool that he's been able to jump around and race different teams. Of course, he's driven the 26 for Sam Hunt Racing, driven the 18 for Joe Gibbs Racing, and now will drive for Brett Holmes Racing. I think that's good to see. I think I think Connor Mosack is going to surprise a lot of people in that race. I think he's better than Brett Holmes, though disrespect Brett Holmes. But I think that Connor Mosack, with his experience, I think it's going to play a factor, and I think he'll do extremely well with the organization at Bristol. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Rajah Caruth. As Rajah Caruth is back in the Xfinity Series and will drive the 45 for Alpha Prime Racing this weekend at Kansas. He will also have iRacing on the car this weekend. Really excited to see that Rajah Caruth is getting another opportunity to race in the Xfinity Series. I believe he's got 1 or 2 more starts after this race, so he's getting an extra start added to his season. I think Rajah Caruth is going to surprise a lot of people. I really think he is. I think Rajah's a really talented driver. I know he made some mistakes at Pocono where he got into, I think it was Alex LeBay, and I know LeBay was not a very happy camper. But I really think that Rajah is a really, really good and talented driver, and I think he'll do really, really well in the 45 with Alpha Prime Racing. And I think the organization has also been getting much, much better, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ty Dillon. As Ty Dillon will have a new pit crew for the remainder of the season starting this weekend, as first reported by Brian Nolan, who I believe works at Front Stretch. Ty Dillon will be getting new pit crew members from Joe Gibbs Racing, and like I mentioned, we'll have them for the rest of the season. I don't think Ty Dillon's pit crew has been the big problem. I think the team overall itself, I think some of the things been going on with the team. I don't think the organization, at least for the 42 car, has been as fast. But I think these changes also could end up being made right now, because I think they're making some additions and changes for Noah Gragson next year. Remember, Ty Dillon will not be returning to Petty GMS Motorsports in 2023. He'll be going to a new organization. A lot of rumors and rumblings behind the scenes is that he could end up at Rich Host Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. It's good to see he has a new pit crew, though, and hopefully it will help him out, considering it is a Joe Gibbs Racing pit crew. Hopefully it will help out Ty Dillon have some really cool opportunities here in the future. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Garrett Smithley. As it was announced today, that Garrett Smithley will be substituting for Matt Mills this weekend at Kansas, and Matt Mills will not be driving this weekend at Kansas. The big reason why is because Matt Mills is unfortunately under the weather and has contracted the flu and will sit out due to that. It's cool to see that Garrett Smithley is getting an opportunity to race in the 5 car. I think Garrett Smithley is a decent driver. I don't think he's a fantastic driver, but I think he's a decent driver to have as a substitute. That being said, it's a tough break for Matt Mills. I think Matt Mills is a very, very solid and a really, really good driver, and it's a shame that a driver like Garrett Smithley has to come in because of sickness, but it is what it is. Hopefully Matt Mills will end up feeling just a little bit better, and hopefully things will improve for Matt Mills, and hopefully he can feel better so he can be back racing here very, very soon. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about an upcoming next-gen test. There's going to be an upcoming next-gen test that's going to be taking place here at the end of September. In fact, in about a week and a half from now, there is going to be another next-gen test that will take place around the September 20th to September 21st weekend at Homestead Miami Speedway. This will be the first test we've had in September, I think around the 4th or 5th test, and the first, second, or third major organizational test since basically, I believe the Martinsville tests are basically since the beginning of the season. The big reason I think they're testing is I think they might be testing some new stuff heading into 2023. Every team will be able to have, I think, around 2 to 3 cars that will be able to show up for each organization to get some experience for the teams. Overall, it's good to see they're doing another next-gen test, and it's also going to be open. I believe it's also going to be open to the public as well, so if you're going to the test, you'll be allowed to get in. It's unclear if they're going to be live streaming the events or not, but it is good to basically see that there's going to be an action test happening, and maybe we'll see some better mile-and-a-half racing, even though I think the mile-and-a-half racing itself this year has been really, really awesome, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about GMS racing. Now, I believe I can't remember who it is. Mike Beam was on Sirius XM NASCAR radio and talked about something that was kind of reported a few years ago. And it was reported a few years ago that GMS owners Mike Beam and Maury Gallagher flew out to Denver and were debating about buying Furniture Row Racing about 3 to 4 years ago. But they held off for the debut of the next-gen car. I remember this very, very well because remember, GMS Racing was in the running and the rumors when Furniture Racing was also in the conversations if they were going to continue racing or not in 2018. It had been rumored that GMS was one of them in the running to get it. And also remember in 2018 as well at Watkins Glen, they actually GMS drove a 23 Toyota, and that was driven by Spencer Gallagher, who is one of the higher-ups at GMS Racing. What if it would have happened if Mark Trixner was teammates with Spencer Gallagher, or like a driver like Daniel Suarez or Matty D went to GMS? We may have never really ever had Petty GMS Motorsports. And look at Petty GMS Motorsports itself. They just got their first win as an organization with the combination in the merger, and it's been a very successful team. I'm not sure if this team would have been as successful, but it's just such an interesting and really cool story to see that GMS was looking to buy Furniture Row Racing a few years ago. I completely forgot about that, and it's such an interesting story to see. And now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Hoon Coast Racing. As it was announced yesterday that Hoon Coast Racing is officially going to be expanding to 2 cars in 2023, and the second car is going to be a number 78 Chevy. It's already been confirmed that Callum Allen will be returning to the 77 car heading into the season. But the big question is who is going to be driving this car? Before we talk about who could end up driving the car, let's talk about the Hoon Coast Racing. This makes a lot of sense in my opinion. There's been rumblings, rumors in the IndyCar industry. There's been talk that they've been looking to expand. I know that there have been a press conference, and I think David Lamb was there, if I'm not mistaken, kind of talking about Hoon Coast was looking to expand heading into next season. And to me, I think it makes a lot of sense. You look at what Hoon Coast Racing's been able to accomplish, and I think having multiple cars in their team, especially since they basically bought the Carlin Racing chassis and the Carlin Racing team, I think it makes a lot of sense for them to go ahead and pick up another ride, and it could bring someone over perhaps in the future, like maybe somehow they get out of nowhere, like, I don't know, Takuma Sato, Felix Rosenqvist, who knows at this point. But I think it's great to see Hoon Coast Racing Hollinger is going to be expanding next year, and I think overall it's really, really good for the sport that they are going to be expanding for next year, in my opinion. I think it's really generally exciting, and good luck to them heading into next year. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Darlington TV ratings from this past weekend. So according to Austin Konetsky, who works at Sportsnet, he reports that Darlington averaged 2.341 million average viewers on USA for the Southern 500. That is down 4.8% compared to last year on NBCSN, which scored a 2.458 million viewers on the network. Now, when you look at the TV ratings, it's down, but it's not down horrendously. But why is the TV ratings down? People could say maybe there's some football games going on, but you really didn't have that going on. I think the big key factor to why the ratings are down is the fact that how basically ended for the Daytona race. There were not a lot of people watch Daytona. I think only like 1.4, 1.48 million people ended up watching the race on Sunday. And you have to don't forget that it actually ended up raining as well during the race, and it had another delay in the middle of the race, and it ended on Sunday morning. So they probably had no momentum and not a lot of good promotion, considering before that they had a lot of people watching. It ended up being on basically CNBC, and people forgot there probably was a race on USA. So to me, it makes a lot of sense why the ratings are down. It's disappointing nonetheless because we've seen some really, really good numbers and a lot of good things when it comes to the ratings this year. But at the same token and same time, when you don't have a lot of promotion really going your way, you're going to have situations like this where ratings are going to go down. Am I disappointed about this? Absolutely. But it makes a lot of sense why the ratings are down. Like I said, it's very disappointing, but it is not a major shock and not a major surprise to me that the ratings are down for this weekend. It really isn't a major shock to me, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Jeremy Clements. It was reported by Steve Carnes, who I believe is one of the managing founders of Jeremy Clements Racing, someone who really works with the Jeremy Clements Racing organization. He reports himself that Jeremy Clements is expected to appeal the penalties at 10:30 in the morning on Tuesday. He first had reported 9:30 in the morning, but he's clarified it will be 10:30 in the morning on Tuesday. The reason that Jeremy Clements Racing is going to appeal those penalties, I already talked about they're going to appeal those penalties, but the appeal is being heard this upcoming week. And the big reason is because this upcoming race, not this week in Kansas, but the next week, is Bristol, which is the cutoff race for the NASCAR Xfinity Series. If Jeremy Clements' team is able to win the appeal, this would move some drivers lower in the points. I believe this moves out Ryan Sieg back out of the playoffs, and Sheldon Creed also moves back out of the playoffs as well, though I do think Sheldon Creed could win one of these next two races with how much pace he has had. I think it's great that Jeremy Clements is appealing the penalties. Apparently, it was something low in, like, I can't remember exactly what it was. I talked about it like a week or two ago. Something like low in the engine, perhaps, is what really caused that. I'm very intrigued to see how this penalty is going to go. Usually, you don't see penalties rescinded. Maybe they'll get a rescinded points penalty, but I still think the win is probably going to be taken away from them because usually NASCAR does not rescind wins and give wins back to drivers. But I think what Jeremy Clements Racing is doing, I think is justifiable, and it would be cool if they end up winning the appeal. But in all honesty, in all seriousness, I'm not expecting them to win the appeal. I just don't expect them to win the appeal. And that's no disrespect to Jeremy Clements and Jeremy Clements Racing, because I would love for them to win the appeal. I just don't personally think that they are going to win the appeal, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Scott McLaughlin. As it was announced yesterday, that Scott McLaughlin has signed a multi-year contract extension to continue driving the 3-car for Team Penske. Scott McLaughlin, of course, has been driving for Team Penske for the last 2 seasons in IndyCar, and is also arguably the most successful V8 Supercars driver in the history of V8 Supercars. Scott McLaughlin has already won 3 races so far in the 2022 IndyCar season, and has a really good outside shot of winning the IndyCar Series championship. If not for mistakes early in the year, in the middle portion of the year, Scott McLaughlin probably right now would be the championship leader going into the weekend. I am so happy that Scott McLaughlin is returning. He is the future of Team Penske, in my opinion. Look what Scott McLaughlin's been doing. The first year with the team, he kind of struggled. He had a little bit of struggles, but had a couple really strong races. You look back at Texas, where he was really, really fast. But then, this year, he starts by winning St. Petersburg. He had a really good end of last year. And he's been really getting the mojo. And I think the Scott McLaughlin could become the next Scott Dixon in the series when it comes to the number of championships. I don't think he's going to win the championship this year. I still think that's going to go to either Joseph Newgarden or his teammate Will Power at this point. But I think that Scott McLaughlin's got a really good outside shot to win the championship this year. But not only that as well, when you think of the success of Scott McLaughlin so far, I think he's done such an incredible job in IndyCar in the few years that he's raced in. And, you know, a lot of people love him to come to NASCAR. We'll talk about that in a little bit in this video. But I really love what Scott McLaughlin's not only been accomplishing, but what he's been doing. So he absolutely deserves this contract extension to stay with Team Penske, and he's going to be there for the long term. It's going to be a long-term contract, so he's going to be there for many, many years, and will continue driving and getting a win. Now, he needs to win the Indy 500 to stay there for the rest of his career, but Scott McLaughlin, I think, will win Indy 500 at this point. He could win it next year. He's a really good option to get it done, and I think he could win the Indy 500 in the future. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kevin Harvick. Now, Kevin Harvick has been going off on Twitter for the last 2 days. Ever since Kevin Harvick put that tweet out about Darlington and basically with the caution situation, Kevin Harvick has been going off on Twitter in a major, major way. He was answering a lot of questions from a lot of people. First question he asked about the future, basically talk about Scott McLaughlin, saying he should come in, and then talk about praising Marcus Ambrose, saying that Marcus Ambrose would have won a lot of races in double-digit races in Cup if he had raced with a better team, which I 100% agree. He also talked about how basically the 1,000 horsepower package should be run for the short tracks, and also that we should not have stage cautions during road courses. I know a couple of people said we shouldn't have stage cautions at all, but Kevin Harvick's advocating for no stages on road course tracks. Kevin Harvick coming back to Twitter has been really, really fun to see, and basically a lot of questions he's answered. I think is really good. One thing I love about some of these drivers is they're really getting to be able to show their personalities a lot more on social media. You look what Denny Hamlin's able to do. I think Denny Hamlin is one of the best listens. Do I think he's my personal favorite driver? No, but on social media, he's definitely one of my favorites on social media for sure, because he does a really good job explaining a lot of things, and I think he does such a fantastic job right there. You also kind of think about as well what these drivers have done. Kyle Busch also been on social media. We're going to talk about that near the end of the video with the Kyle Busch rumblings. But I just think it's so cool to see you have drivers being active on social media, being able to speak on certain situations and giving their honest opinion, and NASCAR not coming down hard on these drivers and really hitting them with major, major fines. So I think that's such a major positive, and it's really great to see that drivers are able to speak their opinions, and I think it's really fun for sure to see. So it's fun to see what Kevin Harvick's been doing on social media. It's been fun talking about Marcus Ambrose. I really love Scott McLaughlin to come to NASCAR. By the way, he needs to come race in NASCAR and do a couple starts. Same with Marcus Ambrose. Please come back to NASCAR, because I think it would be really, really fun for sure. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to go ahead and talk about the fire situation. Now, for those of you who are not been unaware, there have been a lot of fires from the Ford camp this year, and really in the last 2 weeks, there have been a lot of fires. All started at Indianapolis Road Course. You had Chris Buescher and Joey Logano both who ended up catching on fire. But NASCAR already made a change over there a couple weeks ago that made the rocker panels get a little bit more exhaust, and making the exhaust, I think, go out a little bit more, if I'm not mistaken. Then you had some fires from Cole Custer in Michigan, and then Chase Briscoe caught on fire. And then in the past week, we saw 2 big fires from Justin Haley and mainly Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick was extremely critical of NASCAR, was really, really mad at NASCAR for how long the caution took and what took really long to get done. NASCAR has made a major, major change. We kind of talked about us on the channel, kind of scoffed us a little bit, but there's been more updates in regards to this that came out on the day there. So, according to multiple reporters, Bob Poggers and Jeff Gluck mainly, they say that NASCAR has updates the changes to prevent rubber buildup and fire spread. What they've added is some intumescent coatings around the tire, maybe some insulation around the area to make sure that things do not catch up on fire. The other thing they've done is they've had lateral dam seals must be installed. I think more kind of insulation kind of things to make sure that this car doesn't catch on fire as easily. I think the drivers have been more outspoken than before, and you think about what NASCAR is doing here, they're being a little bit reactive, but I want to give NASCAR some props here for not waiting forever to basically go ahead and make an announcement. Just wait till the end of the year. I think the fact that they've already made this change this quickly, I think this is a major, major great step in the right direction for the sport as a whole. But the other thing I kind of want to say is that this is something that's probably been planned on for the last 2 weeks. I think with the Joey Logano situation, the Chris Buescher situation earlier in the year at Indianapolis Road Course, I think NASCAR was looking at other ways that they could fix some of the problems that have been really, really caused. And to me, I think this right here is such a major step and a great thing in the right direction. Now, is this going to prevent fires? No, I don't think this is going to completely prevent fires, but I think what this is going to do is it's going to help the possibility of not spreading fires inside the car and reaching a dash. Because some of these fires, like the one with Kevin Harvick, they've been reaching a dash. So I think the fact that NASCAR has gone ahead and done this, I think it's a major step. We'll see it put to the test, and maybe we'll see something with the Fords, and we won't see any more issues with fires going forward, but I'm not really sure if that is going to be the case. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens, but yeah, this is definitely an interesting story for sure, and good to see a NASCAR is being a little more proactive, but not completely proactive, but finally reacting to the situation. But they got to stop being more reactive, and they need to be proactive on the situation, because NASCAR has a great safety pattern and a safety record, and they need to keep continuing that in the long-term future. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about in-car camera feeds. Now, this has been something that's been rumored in the industry for the last few weeks, but this is something that was officially confirmed today by multiple people. So, it was reported by first Bob Pockers that NASCAR is going to be live streaming every in-car camera from 1st to 36 from every Cup Series car on its website and app starting this weekend at Kansas. This is something, and I'm going to talk about in a second. This means everyone in the field, from first in points, Joey Logano, to all the last in 36, from like the 77 car to the 51 car. This is something that's been rumored for the last few weeks, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, but this is something that now is officially confirmed. This right here, in my honest opinion, is a major, major win for not only NASCAR, but for the teams as well, and for every fan as well. You get an opportunity to view every single in-car camera, and now if you don't want to watch the TV coverage, you can now watch the in-car coverage and get to see the solid racing from in-car, get to see every driver in the field, including in the back, and you don't get to miss any action if you're going to be watching all 36 in-car cameras. And I haven't said this much, but I think this is something that has needed to be done for a very, very long time. Really for the last 10 years, I should say. It's something that's been kind of advocated for a lot of people. And they kind of did this with Race Buddy a little bit, but you didn't get all 36 drivers. Now you get the opportunity of every single driver who raced in the Cup Series. They're going to have a live in-car camera, and you're going to get to see the great action. I know I've been rumored at one point it was only going to be the playoff drivers, but the fact that it's everybody that's getting this opportunity, I think this is not only phenomenal, but I think this is really exciting and really great, and very happy to see that everyone will get an opportunity to have an in-car camera starting here this weekend at Kansas. I think this is a major step, and I think it's something that doesn't just need to happen the rest of this year, but it needs to happen going into next year as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the 2023 NASCAR schedule. It was reported by Adam Stern last night before the big North Wilkesboro announcement we're going to talk about here in just a little bit. But it was reported by Adam Stern that after the big announcement, he says that the 2023 NASCAR schedule could be released as soon as next week. We already know at this point the 2023 NASCAR schedule has been delayed for a little bit. There had been a lot of talk that they were going to try to release it in the middle to late August, but they have been delaying the release of the schedule for a very, very long time. But it seems like we're kind of starting to get the momentum rolling. Many tracks already starting to confirm their dates. The Daytona 500 is already confirmed. We're going to talk about the big North Wilkesboro announcement here soon. We got the Phoenix Championship race already confirmed. The Busch Clash has already been confirmed. Gateway is expected to continue having their day for the next 2 to 3 years. And a lot of other tracks are starting to confirm their events for the 2023 season. This is really good to see. We're kind of starting to get somewhere with the schedule, because one thing I've been saying is we can't, again, I love that NASCAR waits a little bit, but I think you're kind of getting into a stretch. And the reason is one, you got a lot of people that need to start planning for 2023. And budgets right now, with how the economy is, budgets are a lot more tighter when it comes to this stuff than they have been in the past. So I think this is something that basically needs to get out as soon as possible so people can start planning for 2023, because we're less than 5 months from the start of the 2023 season, because the 2023 season kicks off on February 5th at the Busch Clash at the LA Coliseum. I also expect as we get closer to the release of the schedule, which could be coming out here soon, I would expect that we are going to start seeing a little bit of trinkets of news coming out. There's tracks already revealing their dates. COTA has been one of those tracks that's been kind of in the running to reveal their dates in the near future. And I'm really good to, again, I'm very happy that NASCAR is kind of being proactive. It's really, well, they're being reactive a little bit, but I'm glad to see that NASCAR is trying to finally get the schedule released. This has been the major thing that everyone's been talking about, is release of the schedule. One of the two major things that's been on the minds, and I think with everything going on, I don't think it'll be long. I don't know if it'll be next week, but hopefully it's next week. But I think regardless, by the end of probably around the 20th, 21st of September, which is I think kind of close to when the schedule got released last year, I think it'll be released around the same time it did last year. So in the coming days and weeks, we should be hearing about the official 2023 Cup schedule. And I think about a month later, probably in the middle of October, you're probably going to see the release of the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series schedules as well. I would also assume the IndyCar schedule is not also that far away from getting their schedule released as well. But we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. But I'm very happy to see that we're starting to make some progress toward the release of the 2023 schedule. And now we're going to jump on to the first of two major stories of today's episode, and probably one of the biggest announcements so far of 2022, as it is officially confirmed today that North Wilkesboro, yes, heard that right, North Wilkesboro is officially coming back to the NASCAR Cup Series schedule in 2023, as they are going to be hosting the 2023 All-Star Race. This race is going to take place on May 21st, 23rd, meaning this is going to be a Sunday race. I would presumably assume that this race is going to end up being a night race, but it could be confirmed, it could be a day race, but I would expect that it's going to be a night race as well. This will also be in a full weekend from May 19th to 21st, so some other events are going to be announced. Those will be coming at a later date. Bill Weiger from Fox Sports, basically the executive vice president of Fox Sports, Adam Stern, reported the day before this announcement came out, said that NASCAR has been wanting to change locations for the All-Stars for a very, very long time, and basically every year going to different and new locations. It was also announced at the press conference today as well, when it comes to North Wilkesboro, that they're going to be adding an additional $4 million to the renovations basically for the All-Star race as well. I cannot tell you right now how pumped and excited I am to see that North Wilkesboro is coming back to NASCAR. This is something that I did not even think was going to be realistic even about 6 months ago, at least for a Cup race in the near future. I didn't think this was going to happen. I thought maybe Xfinity Series and Truck Series was realistically going to happen. But we're getting a NASCAR All-Star race at North Wilkesboro. This feels like the Field of Dreams scenario for the MLB, where they bring the Field of Dreams game back. They're not bringing it back next year, by the way, but they're bringing back the Field of Dreams a couple years ago. Now, one thing that's been noted in the thing is that some say it's going to be on FS1. I think that they are going to change it just because they really wanted this back, and Fox really wanted this to be at a grassroots track like North Wilkesboro. I think it will end up being on main Fox. I think it will end up being there, and it needs to be on main Fox. But back to this. There has not been a NASCAR race that's taken place at North Wilkesboro since September 29th, 1996. It'll be almost 27 years since the last race at North Wilkesboro, when this race happens on May 21st. And not only that, but this will also be, of course, taking place on the 75th anniversary season and going back to one of the OG original tracks on the calendar. Another thing I haven't mentioned, but what NASCAR has been doing with the schedule, I know Eric mentioned this on his Twitter, and I think in the video today, I think he mentioned this as well. Basically, they talked about the fact that, in a sense, it's really good that NASCAR is going and basically doing, the new school, but going to the old school fans as well. And what's so crazy is that they're taking the All-Stars from Texas, which Texas took the Cup Series date they had at North Wilkesboro and took that from them. And they're basically having poetic justice of returning to North Wilkesboro. I'm going to be able, as a fan, for the first time, be able to see this. And I would definitely, for sure, love to be at the All-Star race as well. Now, one thing that has not been announced at this time is when are they going, what is the format going to be? I personally don't want to see a crazy format. I think that the racing itself is going to speak for itself, and I think the track will speak for itself. Now, looking back some of the old school North Wilkesboro races, they weren't the most fantastic and the most craziest races in the world. But I think that this next-gen car could definitely improve, and I think the racing could definitely be put on really, really good, because I think some of the late-model racing has been really good. So, and the Cup cars haven't raced in 27 years. And one of the things that really kind of made an indicator that this was going to be happening is the fact that they canceled all the dirt track events. They're not having a dirt track event. There have been a lot of conversations about this, and I know that Dorp Clear talked about this on their podcast. But I think it's just so phenomenal to see that it's coming back. Now, another big key thing that needs to be talked about is, are we going to see NASCAR give some exceptions, let some legendary drivers race, like a Dale Jr., like a Tony Stewart, like Jeff Gordon? I think if you want to make this event even bigger, I think having legendary drivers come back. And why not make this a potential throwback weekend as well, an extra throwback weekend where all the drivers run throwback liveries, especially since it's the 75th year of NASCAR next year. I think it would be phenomenal to see if this did end up becoming a legitimate throwback race. I think that'd be phenomenal, and I think that would be definitely really, really cool to see. In all honesty, in all seriousness, though, I'm really pumped and really excited to see that North Wilkesboro is coming back. It just, when I heard the news today, I was legitimately almost in tears as a fan, because I was just so cheerful when I heard the news last night, everything that they've done, and it's just so phenomenal. And we also should just give credit to Slap Shoes and Dale Jr. and Terry Parsons being big factors in helping North Wilkesboro come back. I can't believe it's coming back. It's real. I'm so happy as a fan, and I can't believe it's actually happening, and I cannot wait for North Wilkesboro to be back on the schedule. It's so exciting, and it's so great to see, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode. As once again, like every other NASCAR news video, we're talking about Kyle Busch. Yes, Kyle Busch is in the news cycle once again due to his free agency talks. Right now, Kyle Busch is not signed for 2023. Maybe, but maybe not anymore. And the big reason is because he doesn't have a sponsor for 2023. And it's very likely at this point that he's out of Joe Gibbs Racing. And it'll be very likely replaced by Ty Gibbs heading into the 2023 season. And more kind of came out tonight. First, a report by Adam Stern showing the two potential favorite teams being still Rich Choice Racing and 2311 Racing. And in Adam Stern's original article that he ended up going ahead and posting, he reports that they would leave, Kyle Busch was to leave the team would end up saving $10 million a year. So Kyle Busch makes around $10 to $11 million a year. Kyle Busch also tweeted today that he is still worth a lot of money, around 2 to 3. I think it was like $2.6, $2.7 million from an MVP index tweet that came out showing that he still made a lot of money. And then just a few hours ago, about 2.5 hours ago, around 6:30 Central Standard Time, Twitter started going nuts because Dale Jr. basically goes ahead and tweets a bunch of different emojis showing, I think, a Busch, then going an arrow, and then going to an Magic 8-ball, and then Twitter went nuts. Then, about an hour after that, or it's about 20 minutes after that, Adam Stern tweets out that while RCR and Kyle Busch Motorsports do not have announcements yet, it is expected that Kyle Busch is likely going to be heading to Richard Childress Racing in 2023, and it's the most likely landing spot for him heading into 2023. But then, about 30 minutes after the report comes out, Kyle Busch comes out and says it is, with shocking emojis. Now, do I think that Dale Jr. and Kyle Busch were trolling tonight? I absolutely think that they were trolling tonight. However, I am very likely saying this. I think that right now you have your favorites of 2311 Racing and Richard Childress Racing. And I'm starting to think that Kyle Busch is more than likely still going to end up at Richard Childress Racing. And there's a lot of reasons why I still think he's going to end up there. Though right now it is not confirmed he's going officially yet to Richard Childress Racing. Here's why. Kyle Busch is a driver that I know that him and Richard have a major history against each other back in 2011. But Richard Childress said this a few weeks ago at Daytona that basically said that him and Kyle have really kind of reconciled and their relationship is a lot better as a duo. And basically what I believe it was Jordan Bianchi asked, and then Richard said, "You said it, not me." It's also been noted and reported in the last few days that there's a couple other options that Rich Childress Racing could end up going with. First of all, Tyler Reddick could end up leaving Rich Childress Racing end of this year and going to either Joe Gibbs Racing 18 or going to 2311 Racing, because from inside sources, there's a lot of talk that Richard is still not happy with Tyler Reddick, despite this announcement happening almost 3 months ago at this point. Well, about 2.5 months ago, I should say, since the main announcement happened. It's been basically reported that Richard is still angry with Tyler and wants Tyler out and would not continue. However, we've heard from Richard and David Wilson that Tyler is still going to drive in 2023, but things can change very, very quickly. And then Kyle Busch ends up going to the A card next year. That is a viable option, and that would be crazy in full circle if that ended up happening. The other option that could end up happening in this case is basically the other option is that Kyle Busch goes to a third RCR car in the number 33 car, or Tyler Reddick gets moved to 33, and Kyle Busch goes to the 8. There's been some rumblings in the industry and chatter in the industry that basically they are looking to search for another charter for Kyle Busch heading into next year, potentially as an extra charter, so Kyle Busch can end up driving for the team. And a lot of people think maybe Spire could sell their charter, or Rick Ware could sell a charter to Richard. That is a very, very viable option for the team. Now, I think that at this point, the Kyle Busch is going to go to Richard Childress Racing. I know it's not officially announced, but I think he's going to be going to Richard Childress Racing. I know he keeps changing our story where he's going to go. First, we all thought he'd go to Stewart Haas Racing. He would stay at Joe Gibbs Racing. Then he'd go to 2311. And then we speculated he'd be going to Kaulig. Well, I'll mention Kaulig here for a second. Kaulig Racing, I could still see end up being in and out as part of the branding. And here's why I think Kaulig could still be a little bit in play for this as well. Kaulig Racing has wanted a Truck Series team. Who has a Truck Series team? Kyle Busch. And also, it's rumored that GMS could end up selling their Truck Series organization to a team like Kaulig Racing. And Kaulig, if they wanted to, they could purchase ownership stake in Kyle Busch Motorsports as well. That is also another option that they could end up going with. At this particular point, though, I think you have two really major options left for the Cup side. You have RCR in 2311, and I think at this point it is very, very, very likely that Kyle Busch is going there. Now, it could also be a troll at this point, and this is all could be BS, but at this particular point, I'm pretty confident in saying this. I think Kyle Busch is going to go to Richard Childress Racing, because a lot of people in the industry think at this point that he's not going back to Joe Gibbs. And many are thinking at this particular point that if he goes back to Joe Gibbs, it's going to be a major shocker. I think 2311, I know that Toyota really wants to keep him, and I think the Truck Series team plays a factor, but Kyle Busch also wants a long-term contract, and I think going to 2311, it's going to be too much of I think it's going to be too much of a risk to stay there, because I don't think it's going to be long-term contracts. I think it'll be short-term. I think if Kyle Busch goes to RCR, he really is going to help the team. And you think about what Kyle Busch has been able to do with mid-pack organizations. He took the 18 car that was driven by J.G. Lee and Bobby Labonte for the 4 or 5 years. That car struggled for those years. Kyle Busch goes into first year, wins 8 races, and is an outside championship threat. So I think Kyle Busch goes to the 8-car RCR, and look what Tyler Reddick's done this year. He's got 2 wins with the team. He's a championship threat and can win the championship this year and could be a really big spoiler to win the championship. I think regardless of where Kyle Busch goes, he will be an asset for them and will be a big asset for Chevy, because I think he's going to be going to Richard Childress Racing at this point in 2023. So anyway, that is going to be it for today's news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notification on to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and follow me on Patreon as well. Links description below that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. Do you think Kyle Busch is officially heading to Richard Childress Racing or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about North Wilkesboro hosting the All-Star race in 2023? Let me know in the comments below. I'm not sure or not. I may have a Truck Series race to be later this evening, but don't really count on it at this point. That's just an outside possibility. And I might also Saturday do an Xfinity review, but I'm not sure yet. It may also be just a Kyle Busch video. You'll have to wait and see what's coming on the channel. And then Sunday, of course, will be the Cup Series playoff race for the Hollywood Casino 400 dropping on the channel. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.